Welcome back to Nutritional and Environmental Genocide, Part 2 by Dr. Samori Swygert. So we're picking up where we left off at, or Part 1. So we were talking about the wood inside Parmesan cheese that there's a lawsuit out now. So moving along, let's talk about food recalls. Have you noticed that every time you turn around, there is a major food recall? We've seen Chipotle. Chipotle was having issues, I believe, with salmonella inside their produce. I'm not sure what was I don't know if it was the lettuce or the beans or whatever the case may be, but they had a recall because they had salmonella outbreaks all over the country, various stores over the country. We know that Bluebell ice cream, a famous, very tasteful. I used to eat Bluebell ice cream. They had to recall thousands of gallons of Bluebell ice cream because it was found to have Listeria monocytogenes in it. That's a bacteria. We know that there's been major recalls of peanut butter, spinach, tomatoes, lettuce, blueberries, because these things have been found to have salmonella, Legionella, Listeria, E. coli. This stuff has happened time in, time out. Seems like almost monthly. You had the company Sabra, Sabbra. If you like Middle Eastern cuisine, a lot of people eat hummus. It's made from chickpeas. Sabra, which makes a lot of hummus, they had to recall thousands of pounds of their hummus because they had a Listeria outbreak. So you have to ask yourself, what's going on with that? Why every time we turn around, there's some outbreak that is compromising our food chain and is leading to recalls. Now, I also want to talk about toilet to tap water that most people need to understand. There's a very good art. You can just Google that term, toilet to tap water. And I think that might have something to do with a lot of these food recalls. There's an article in the New York Times. This was a few years ago. This may have been made about 2012, 2009 maybe, that covered the fact that, listen, much of the water that we consume and much of the water that is used for irrigation and spraying on crops is really sewage water. And what they're doing is they're recycling it through reverse osmosis, ultrafiltration, through infrared light, and a few other distilling of the water. And they then centralize that water that has gone through all those multi-processes, the reverse osmosis, the ultrafiltration, the infrared, the distillation, and then it's ready to go into, your drinking water, into bottling so you can consume. So if you don't see on the label, if it doesn't say spring water, more than likely, according to the articles I read, this is toilet to tap water. And this is the same stuff that they are spraying on the crops. So it makes you ask, well, maybe this is the reason why we're seeing outbreaks of E. coli, and E. coli is associated with fecal matter. Whenever you hear E. coli, know that you're talking about fecal matter, contaminant. So it makes you wonder, okay, so they're spraying us on here. Maybe this is the reason why we're having this recall here for this particular bacteria. So that's that. Toilet to tap water. You want to check that out. The other thing, let's talk about our rice and our wine. So, everybody, is familiar with rice, that you eat, your Vitaraz, Mahatma, Uncle Ben's, Rice-A-Roni, things of that nature. You have your white, you have your brown, you have your wild rice. About 2 years ago, and this one I think was on CNN, I was reading, and then it filtered out to a lot of other news outlets, was that much of the rice that we consume have been found to have high levels of arsenic inside of the rice that was tested. So it makes you ask, what's going on? Could this be accounting for a lot of things that we are seeing manifested physiologically and behaviorally? Now, that was just the rice. They also had last year in 2015, this was the early part of 2015, where they're saying how many of the famous brand wines that we consume, the wines contain high levels of arsenic also. So the rice and the wine are found to have high levels of arsenic. Shouldn't even be arsenic in there. And these are the wines that you may see at like your the wine section of like a Kroger or Food Line, Walmart, stores of that nature. It's not, they didn't say it was necessarily the top shelf, like, oh, I'm sipping on some 1945 Chateau de Brienne choice, reserve wine. Not that, but this is, the common wines that you may see. So think about that. Now, also, let's talk about what we see with this. We had the H5N2 avian bird flu that devastated the poultry industry. So, you think of your chicken, your turkey, your Cornish hens. That stuff ravaged the poultry industry, costing millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. But it's like, where is this coming from? How all of a sudden you just have these viruses pop up and just, We had the swine flu, also known as the pig virus, also known as the porcine virus, where 1.3 million piglets had to be killed or died in 1 month. This was in the New York Times also. This was about 1.5 years ago. The pig virus, the swine flu. So we had that circulating. Okay? We also want to talk about what happened with the with Subway. So, everybody's familiar with, Subway. You get your foot long for $5, and people are in love with Jared, even though he's locked up now for child abuse and molestation. Subway is a major hit, but they took a major hit also because they found out that their bread, they were using this dough softener called acetylcarbamide. It's a chemical that is found as a major component in what we know as yoga mats. So, you go to the gym, you see the yoga mats out there, people doing the exercise on, very flexible, very durable, very permanent. They were using this as a dough softener. So you get your foot long for $5 and you get some yoga mat in there. And the thing is, so you eat this and this stuff is just what? Just permanently coating my intestines? And every time you turn around, there's some gluten allergy. What's really going on? Why is gluten allergies all of a sudden a thing now? I mean, when I was growing up, I barely even heard of gluten allergies. Now every time you turn around, it's a gluten allergy. Somebody's a gluten allergy. Got gluten. Okay, moving along. Tyrone Hayes, UC Berkeley researcher. He was studying. He found that the weed killer Roundup, that's is famous on the markets in Home Depot, generates millions of dollars in revenue for weed killer. When he was doing a study on it, he found that the weed killer was actually turning amphibians. Male frogs started manifesting female frog characteristics. So much of the physiology and the just the whole physical attributes of a female frog, the male started developing when they were exposed to what was called atrazine. That was the active component inside of Roundup. And they tried to silence him when he actually discovered this. So you have to ask, okay, well, what's going on with that? The other thing that I want to talk about, you had the USDA say, no, this was the EPA. EPA or USD, one of the two. It's in the New York Times. I read newspapers a lot. This was about a year ago, where you're talking about how they approved. I really believe it was the USDA. Now think about it. Yes, United States Department of Agriculture. It was the USDA. Had approved the use of one of the two components that make up Agent Orange to spray on weeds in America, in the farmland, because many of the weeds have grown resistant to much of the weed killers that we use. So, Agent Orange is really made up of two chemicals. Agent Orange, for those that don't know, but you probably do know, was a defoliant used in Vietnam, sprayed over the forest canopy on trees so that they can see. It was two things. One, when they sprayed the defoliant, it caused the trees to go barren. Of course, so leaves would fall off, branches. That way, the Air Force, when flying over, they could see what was beneath, whether there's war equipment, buildings, contraptions, apparatuses, missiles, whatever the case may be, fighters. They had a clear path. And then also the second component was the fact that if I can destroy your crops, then you can no longer feed yourselves and eat. And so what they found, over the research and time was, look, this Agent Orange was causing crippling abnormalities of Vietnamese people that went on for generations, just destroyed generations of Vietnamese people with crippling abnormalities. So the USDA said, hey, look, you know what? Because these weeds have become so resistant, hey, it's okay to use one of the components of Agent Orange on these crops, on the weeds. So now basically you have them spraying 50% of what is Agent Orange on these crops. And this stuff here will blow in the wind onto your property with the wind currents. This stuff will seep in when it rains. This stuff will seep into the soil and into the groundwater and leach into our local streams, rivers, and estuaries. We drink this stuff. It's basically stewing in the soil in which the crops that we try to eat grow. So what impact is this having on us? Is that we really want to talk about and think about. This stuff is serious, y'all. This is the reason why I'm talking. This is why I do what I do. All right. Next thing, let's talk about these designer drugs, right? You hear, K2, spice, ecstasy, bath salts, flocka, crocodile. These designer drugs, come on. Where are these things coming from now? All right, you have factions of society that say, first of all, when you see most of these incidents of people spazzing out, they get this uncontrollable strength, they go crazy, they lose their minds. This stuff is happening in a lot of major inner cities, right? So what's happening is you have to ask yourself, well, in a lot of these major inner cities, you're saying that factions of society, academic institutions, statisticians, researchers, they say, a lot of black and brown children, they don't perform high enough academically, scholastically, and scholarly, especially in aptitude tests and things of this nature. So if they can't do that, then chances are, and they're not graduating at the level that they should. So if black and brown children in inner cities are not achieving academically, as you say, then they are not the ones that are actually designing these chemical components to sell on the street. That type of stuff is designed by scientists. Working in the healthcare field and getting my degrees, working with drugs, you have to know what you're doing. I've had enough general chemistry, molecular chemistry, organic chemistry, and biochemistry classes to know. You need to understand molecular formula, molecular structure, atoms. You need to know how they react in SN1, SN2 reactions. You need to know about enantiomers, catalysts. You need to know if it works if the reaction occurs at a certain temperature. You need to understand the pH scale, understand molarity. If light is present, will that inhibit the reaction, or will it potentiate the reaction? So if these kids are not to the scholastic aptitude that you say that they're not, don't say that they're the ones that are creating this stuff. This means that you have these scientists that are designing these drugs and they are shipping them out into the inner cities. And our children are the targets. Chances are, leave it to me, I believe that these are probably a lot of drugs, because if you look at the reactions that the people are having, they're losing their minds, they're spazzing out, and they are having either unpredictable, unprecedented like strength, like you can't even control them. They're hallucinating, they're losing their minds. Some people are just, they lose touch with reality. So to me, it seems like these are probably neurological drugs, behavioral drugs that didn't make it to FDA approval because of their side effect profile. And because some drug companies probably invested millions in research and development, and it didn't get what? Approved by the FDA, they have to what? Recoup their money. I spend $50 million on research and development, and you mean to tell me that the FDA cannot grant approval of this drug? I got to get my money back. That's $50 million in research and development. How can I get my money back? Maybe I can sell my recipe on the illegal black market and get something under the table. But that's just a thought. I don't want to get into conspiracy because as soon as you say conspiracy, people just run away. So that's just a thought. And lastly, I'm just going to do a part 3. And part 3 is going to be very short. It should probably no more than 5 minutes. So once again, this is Dr. Samori Swygert signing out. This is Nutritional Environmental Suicide Part 2. Please stay tuned for Part 3 coming up shortly. You can hit me on Twitter at DocSwag06, DOCSWAGG06, and I'm out. Peace.